Time for all the legendary action stars to unite for a movie all together.
Those were up, and they did.
More smarts, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am back from my recovery period from a cold that happened before I could even film this review. This was supposed to be filmed last Thursday, but because I had to, nope, fucking flu season, fuck you flu season, had to have, always gotta be in September. I got the cold to begin September, the first full week of September. God, it's one of the worst fucking things of all. That I'm here with a movie review. This review is going to be for another action film. This was from the first year of the 2010s, and it starred a whole bunch of action stars from the 80s and the 90s. And that film is going to be for none other than 2010's The Expendables, directed by Sylvester Stallone. So what's the plot of this? Barney Ross leads the Expendables, a band of highly skilled mercenaries including knife enthusiast Lee Christmas, martial arts expert Yin Yang, heavy weapons specialist Hail Caesar, demolitions Toll Road, and loose cannon sniper Gunnar Jensen. When the group is commissioned by the mysterious Mr. Church to assassinate the merciless dictator of a small South American island, Barney and Lee head to the remote local to south out their opposition. Once there, they meet with local rebel Sandra and discover the true nature of the conflict engulfing the city. When they escape the island and Sandra stays behind, Ross must choose to either walk away and save his own life or attempt a suicidal rescue mission that might just save his soul. Yeah. How was this made? Well, in mid-2005, writer David Callahan submitted the first draft of a mercenary-inspired action film titled Barrow to Warner Bros. As part of his blind commitment deal with the studio at the time. Callahan revised the script 2 more times and submitted his third final revision in early 2006. Having expressed interest in doing an ensemble film, Sylvester Stallone revealed Callahan's third final revised draft of Barrow and use it as a starting point for the Expendables. Jean-Claude Van Damme was personally offered a role by Stallone, but turned it down because he felt there was no substance or development to the character. Stallone said that Van Damme told him that he should be trying to save people in South Central. At the premiere of the film, Stallone claimed to have been speaking to Van Damme over the phone and had said that he told him, which Van Damme concurred and expressed his regret for not participating, and Van Damme would later appear as the antagonist in the sequel to make up for that. The role of Hail Caesar was initially conceived as a role for Stallone's Demolition Man co-star Wesley Snipes. Snipes turned down the role because of his tax issues, and he's not able to leave the U.S. around that time, and was eventually in jail, and later rewritten for Forrest Whitaker. And due to a scheduling conflict prior to filming, Whitaker got replaced by 50 Cent, but before the part of Hail Caesar finally went to former NFL player Terry Crews, who's usually known for comedy roles, most of the time, and a lot of poorly received comedies. And Steven Seagal was asked to make a cameo appearance, but thankfully turned it down because of negative experiences with Avi Lerner. And many others like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Ben Kingsley, Ray Liotta were all considered for the role of James Monroe. Before Stallone specialist co-star Eric Roberts was eventually cast in the role. Then by May 2009, the script underwent a number of rewrites, and Stallone's Demolition Man co-star Sandra Bullock was rumored to have a role in the film, but she didn't even know about the project And she did express interest in working on another action film and like to have appeared in the film, depending on storyline, but we know she didn't. And Mr. Church, the role of the guy who hires the Expendables for missions, was apparently hard to cast. Schwarzenegger was offered the role, but instead he appeared as a fellow mercenary leader Trench, and the role was then offered to Stallone's takeover and cash co-star Kurt Russell, whose agent replied that he was not interested in civil acting at the moment. As Stallone spent several months after principal photography determined to find a big action name for the part, and rumors suggested that the role had been offered to friend and fellow former Planet Hollywood co-owner Bruce Willis, who was busy filming Cop Out. And Willis's casting as Mr. Church was confirmed by August 2009, though, and he would appear in one scene with both Stallone and Schwarzenegger. And then he went on to film the crappy Kevin Smith film Cop Out, which sucked. But after this movie, The Expendables, was shot and marketed, The Expendables would go on to be released on August 2010, and it got mixed reviews from critics. Praise went towards the action sequences and cast performances, and it was commercially successful. It opened at #1 at the box office, though, despite that, in the United Kingdom, China, and India, and it grossed a total of $274 million worldwide. And it spawned 3 sequels, a second film, a third film, and an upcoming 4th film. Now, as for my reaction, I do enjoy this movie. I think it's a blast and the best of its franchise. And this would easily be the best non-superhero action film of 2010. This might also have been the last epic action film Stallone really did. First things first, the cast is obviously awesome. You see all your favorite action stars here: Stallone, Statham, Lee, Rourke, Willis, Austin, Lundgren, and even Schwarzenegger making a brief appearance. It's definitely awesome and rare to see such a great ensemble in one film. Sadly, most of them appear on screen for a short time except Stallone, Statham, who received the most screen time. And who would have imagined that a film like this can be pulled off, since action stars usually like to market their own films for their ego boost of one versus impossible odds thrown their way, but never say never, as Sly Stallone as director managed to get the likes of Statham and Lee as headliners, enjoyed by Dolph Lundgren, Steve Austin, Randy Couture, Terry Crews, and speaking roles for Mickey Rourke, with Bruce Willis and even the Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger making time to appear as an uncredited cameo. And in the film where Sly had a role in crafting the screenplay, the opportunity of being the unofficial leader of the pack. And story-wise, though, I will admit, it's nothing but the bare basics and provide an excuse to put all these action stars together, and balances some real-world wish lists, such as the attack on Somali pirates, and alongside silver screen fantasy with the taking out of a dictatorship on a fictional island state that had gone rogue, with what else but American bad influence and money, which was because of the dictator that's played by Eric Roberts and his henchman played by Steve Austin. And somehow it's more fun to use the actors' real names most of the time than the characters, because I can hardly remember the characters' names. Most of the characters' names, except for usually the Expendables, the teammates I'm the most familiar with. Because each individual achieved larger than life status, and it's just more fun that way. And structurally, most of the action takes place in the beginning and the finale, while between we usually get fillers like the inevitable dramatic moments, where we witness Stallone and Rourke reminisce their past lives, and provides for a guilt trip to catalyze the mission. You're kind of like watching these guys like catalyze how they were in their prime in the 80s, and they've kind of went downhill ever since then. They're just starting to go downhill. They're starting to reach that age. You could kind of see just the two actors in that whole scene just reminiscing those moments. You see Statham's character having to wrestle a romantic relationship gone awry with an asshole whose love interest is dealing with an asshole boyfriend. And Stallone and Statham are demonstrating their BFF status with their constant ribbing. It's logical, of course, but they feature together almost throughout the film, given their primary star billing. And Statham gives a writer's caricature boost as a user of knives, and he does really let it rip here. Jet Li, on the other hand, in this movie, he has his own field day. Although, his fighting prowess was kind of dumbed down quite a bit for what usually most Kung Fu action movie fans were used to when they saw him in Kung Fu films. Just very, very clear of just being the butt of self-deprecating jokes that make this character Yin Yang come across as money-centric to solve some unexplained family issues. And one of the leading names of the film, he has relatively significant screen time as well, with an action sequence involving himself, Stallone, and Lundgren, and some wicked cooperative fisticuffs together with Statham, But they have twice been on opposite sides in films like The One and War, Rogue Assassin. Yeah, like actually Statham and Jet Li were literally in war again as enemies. And this time, they're teammates in this one. So it's kind of crazy. And action-wise, it's unadulterated violence through and through. And the first shot ever fired in the film involves this complete separation of a torso. The Expendables employed just about everything from cargo planes fitted with machine guns, the van chases for variety, and have his characters equally adapt at breaking limbs with basic martial arts. And possessing edged weapons that dismembers, slice and dices, and mowing down opponents with a spectrum of rifles and machine guns that punctures bodies to look like cheese. And it's kind of the typical 80s action you'd usually get in an action movie. If you watch those in the 80s, it's that kind of gory action, and it's terrific. It's totally breathtaking action. Loud and enjoyable, and there's a lot of blood, and the fights are definitely worth the viewing. It would be very satisfying for an 80s action fan if they ever watched this film, or have not even seen this film yet. Just giving them the memories of back to the old days. Well, now with the movie, the first story can be called kind of boring because we're still learning the characters and their strategy. Once you get past the first 60 minutes, the real action really begins. And that first scene on the ship. There's a 30-minute battle on a small island that begins as explosions, noises, and plenty of blood are on screen. And Stallone and his friends kick ass in the final hour of the film. And there's still also some comedy in the film. A lot of great one-liners, especially from Dolph Lundgren's character, that you could literally call Gunner, aka the character Dolph Lundgren plays in these films, the comic relief of the team or the big clown. Usually. The one that kind of gets in trouble with Barney Ross all the time, and I think he got some decent character development here. He feels like he's not welcome on the team, and so he joins the baddies, but he doesn't know of their plans, and he doesn't think of their plan. He doesn't think they're going to kill the team. He doesn't know they're going to kill the team. Once he kind of realizes, he's kind of choosing not to side with them in that fight Lundgren, Lee, and Stallone have before Stallone decides to go back to the island. So I like that with this character. So I like that we get a bit of development with this character. And in the end, Dolph Lundgren's character is back on the team. He doesn't show up for the final fight because he's obviously in the hospital, but once at the very last scene of the movie, you see him back on the team, he's rehired. So yeah. They can kind of get annoyed with Gunner at times, but they're still willing to accept him on the team regardless if he causes them some issues. That are kind of funny to enjoy watching. And it does kind of carry on from the rivalry him and Stallone had in Rocky IV. And the story, well, Hollywood can definitely make a film so exciting even with a simple story concept, and The Expendables is one of those films that does it. The story's simple because it's about Stallone with the Expendables assigned to eliminate a general now called Vilena. It's simple, and the movie's very exciting. It never really gets boring to me. People can think the first 60 minutes seem boring, but it's never boring to me. It was never boring. The expectation for the film is even very high, with one of the best action hero lineups in cinematic history. It's very high octane, it's unbelievably explosive, it's funny, it's bloodthirsty, it's a proper action movie. This would have not been out of place in the 80s, and not just to fit into the market of today's cinematic action experience. It's definitely more graphic and gory than even feels more graphic and gory than most of the modern day action films today. Maybe not like Rambo 4 levels of gory, but gory. And it adds to the film, and it creates a degree of realism. If you just go around killing people, it's not going to be pretty. The film did what it needed to do. It wasn't afraid to contain blood, gore, and violence for the sake of age restriction, but it wasn't overly ridiculous. And most of the people who did see this film in the theaters when it came out, they're the kind of people that grew up watching the classic action films of the 80s and 90s and want to relive those days. The plot is not that original, yes, but it doesn't need to be. It wasn't expected to be either. And the cast, goes without saying, was definitely fantastic. Usually in the wrong hands, this could be a disaster with conflicting egos, ends up being a believable team of mercenaries where banter is rife and keeping each other alive is the number one priority. And Stallone could definitely give himself a big pat on the back for getting so many iconic characters on the screen together and making it work. Even though there's two much hyped cameo of two actors is short lived, it's definitely a good moment here, and I think you know that moment here. It's when Ross goes to meet Church, who's played by Bruce Willis, and then he reveals that he's also thought of hiring Trench for the mission, but Trench gives the mission to Ross, and him and Ross are shown to be rivals right here, and you like that scene. That's the perfectly well-shortened scene of John McClane, the T-800, and John Rambo, or Rocky, or whatever, or Cobra, whatever three roles you want to call this guy. This guy, Stallone could be like, there's loads of action roles, loads of iconic roles in that era. It's impossible to think of one for a whole bunch of roles, but for action-wise, I guess John Rambo, all just in one entire room, or one entire church. And Stallone was one of those rare movie stars who, even at that period of time, when he wasn't really making any films, such as from 98 to 2005, before he kind of eventually came back, well, he did appear in that, one of those shitty Spy Kids sequels, as the toy maker, the villain. But then, of course, he did also do some other greats around the 2000s. He did Rocky Balboa, he did Rambo 4, and then he did this. So, he's had more career comebacks than any actor in history. Lots of times. Although Stallone wears three heavy hats in the movie, he doesn't carry the weight of the movie on his own shoulders. And if you've read the names of the action stars to support here, in the youngest of the Expendables, who's Jason Statham, was 37 at the time of this movie. And the film shows that there's action movies that are able to definitely kick more ass than quite a few, especially Machete, which literally has some of the fakest trailers you'll ever see, because all the movie is the border. Let's go to the border. If you don't guard the border, U.S. will become Mexico. Let's go have a war at the border. Let's never shut the fuck up about the border, the border, the border, the border, the border. To the point where it's not even an action movie. It's just a stupid political PSA, and it should have been called The Border. And then the second one be called The Border Kills. Hell, I even heard Danny Trejo apparently, at the time of The Border Kills' release, he wanted to make a third Machete film, or Machete Goes to Outer fucking Space. It probably talked more about the border there. What kind of space border? The border on Mars? The border on the moon? The border on Saturn? Or the border of the aliens? The Independence Day border? Probably. But thankfully it got scrapped, because that seems like an actually really, really stupid idea. I don't mean stupid as in good, stupid as in painful. It'd be like Fast 9 level. Fast 9 did that, and it was shit. Fast 9 went to outer space. And look how that turned out. And Expendables describes a team of what could be considered mercenaries, or bounty hunters. They go on high-risk missions, guns in hand, they pick up the money, they owe it to them at the end of the day. Their main mission in the movie is initially overthrow a South American dictator on Villena, and they find the real enemy, though, is actually the CIA agent James Monroe, who's actually the real dictator they should be overthrowing. And the movie is just non-stop full of action sequences, and they're fun to watch. There's scenes involving knives and big guns. There's great sequences involving hand-to-hand combat. And you definitely don't want to take a bathroom break when 5'6" Jet Li takes on 6'4" Dolph Lundgren. There's also a fight scene between Steve Austin and Randy Couture that's definitely satisfying for both UFC and WWE fans. I want to actually see a crossover, a UFC and crossover fight of a UFC and WWE match. Expendables even handles the action scenes well. The impacts of bullets, and neither emphasize their maximum effect. There's a couple of good, well-placed scenes, including ones involving a seaplane, a car chase with a vintage pickup truck. The only thing that was lacking was the fight scenes. You expect a movie of Jason Statham and Jet Li showcasing their respective talents, and Statham beats up this group of men playing pickup basketball. It's a scene where Statham goes back to his girlfriend, sees that her boyfriend is being an asshole, abusive asshole to her, and this gets Lee Christmas pissed off. And so he quickly drives down to that basketball court, says, "Why did you bruise her face? I liked it that way. Well, guess what? I'm done with the bitch. You keep her." And so he beats the fucking crap out of them all of them. And once he finishes beating the crap out of them, he picks up the knife, slams the basketball to the boyfriend's chest, stabs the basketball to scare the piss out of him. It's like, next time I will flatten your balls. And he leaves. Like he could, and the boyfriend looks freaked out of his mind, which is so satisfying to see because I'm glad he beat up that piece of shit. And then he reveals to his past, like, and now you know, and it's to his girlfriend, now I know who I am, I should have waited. And he can imply they're going to reconcile. And it resolves that subplot. And there's a fight scene between Jet Li and Dolph Lundgren as well, and you get a bit of banter between their two characters. And Solo himself even looks awkward when he has to run, but the guy was kind of approaching his 60s around this, and from then on it's guns and knives. One particular sequence in which Terry Crews' character Hail Caesar that uses his automatic shotgun to decimate his enemies stands out among the rest, and he muses about how difficult it would be for men to remain calm and hearing the sound of that gun. He's definitely not wrong about that. And the movie stands away from CGI. And what CGI it does use is seemingly integrated. It's not really the case. It's a couple of shots during the end, and the CGI is a little painfully obvious, but for a movie called Expendables, its heroes are awfully resonant. And the one-liners are hilarious. The situations are intentionally ludicrous as to make the violence more cartoonish and horrifying, and things that are done to impossible outlandish, and the massively destructive team emerges unscathed. The surprising end underscores the wonderful ridiculousness, and the numbers of casualties among should have been an alert to the fact that this was supposed to be wildly exaggerated. And it also has one of the best action finales yet. Once Ross and the group discover that Church is a CIA operative and the real target is Monroe, who went rogue and joined forces with Garza to keep the drug money that funds the CIA himself. The CIA cannot afford a mission to kill one of their own directly because of bad publicity. So Ross meets tattoo expert and friend Toll to express his feelings, and Toll makes a confession about letting a woman commit suicide instead of saving her. And Ross is then motivated to go back for Sandra alone, but Yang accompanies him. And Gunnar Jensen, and some hiremen pursue them on the road. It ends in a bad warehouse. Yang and Jensen fight a second time. Ross shoots Jensen when he attempts to impale Yang with a pipe, but then Gunnar Jensen makes amends and gets the layout of Gosler's palace, probably not realizing the hired men's actions, and clearly not wanting to kill his own team. Ross boards the plane with Yang, but he finds the rest of the team deciding to go with him, and they infiltrate Garza's compound. And thinking Monroe hired the team to kill him, Garza then has his soldiers' faces painted and preparing them for a fight. And the team plants explosives through the site, but Ross, while saving Sandra, is captured by Monroe's henchmen. And the team saves him and kills the Brit, but is pinned down by Garza's men as Payne wrestles Ross. But Caesar fights back, but Payne manages to escape. And Garza decides to finally stand up to Moreau. He's done with his shit. And he orders him to leave and returns his money. But though, just as Garza's rallying his men against the Americans, Monroe kills him and escapes with Payne and Sandra. And Garza's men open fire against the team, and they fight their way through, detonating the explosives and destroying the compound. Then Toll and Payne have that fight in the fire, and he throws Payne into the fire, burns him alive, and Ross and Caesar manage to destroy the helicopter before Monroe can escape. And Ross and Christmas catch up to Monroe, and they manage to kill him and they save Sandra. And later, Ross gives his mission reward to Sandra to restore Valena, and the team returns home, and they're celebrating at Tool's tattoo parlor with the recovery and now redeemed Gunnar Jensen, who Yang has forgiven. Ironically, and Christmas and Tool play a game, of knife throwing. And Christmas composes a mocking poem about Tool and throws a bullseye from outside the building. And then the credits roll, and then the song, "The Boys Are Back in Town, the Boys Are Back in Town," plays, and they gain right away into the night on their bikes. Epic song right there. And some other epic songs, like in the extended edition during the final fight, we have the epic song Shine Down. Boom-lay, boom-lay, oh, watch washes on your knees. Boom. I wish, that's only in the extended cut though, but that song should have been the theatrical cut. That song was epic for the final fight. It should have been in there. It's in the trailer though. However, with that being said, I've got some nitpicks with the film, because for one nitpick, the movie does seem a little rushed as far as the story goes. There's a lot of close-up shots during these intense parts that didn't really seem necessary, and the way the camera shook and almost too quickly cut to another scene was confusing, and the blood looks pretty fake at several scenes as when it spreads, and it really looks unreal, and the explosions and others were of course lifelike, and the plot could have been better, but still has some of the era's action movies made for teen crowds, and also there's also the use of CGI. CGI does suck a lot in action films, and it takes away from the old school feel that we love. It's not entirely dependent on it, but when it was there, it definitely feels very unwelcome. But that's it. I don't mind these nitpicks, and I still enjoy the Expendables for how it's supposed to be. This dumb, gritty, fun action film does not take itself seriously. In the end, the Expendables is totally worth watching by if you're a Stallone fan or action fan and want to see all your favorite action legends teaming up for this movie. Anyway, that's it for my review of the Expendables. We're going to rate the Expendables. Here's how I'm going to rate this movie. So overall, if you're an action movie fan and a Stallone fan, then this is totally the movie you should watch and buy for your collection for sure. Especially if you want every old extended to one movie together. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rate the Expendables, I'm going to give the Expendables an 8 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for the Expendables. And, yeah, I'm back now. I did rewatch Expendables 2 last night, so I'll review that review next. And thankfully, the Expendables 3 is on Netflix, so I don't have to waste my money on it. Yeah, I'm going to rewatch these 3 movies. I gotta rewatch the third one next. Then give my rant for the third one. And then, of course, next week, I'm going to start my watch on horror films. The horror films I'm reviewing for the month of October. Sorry about that, guys. Beginning with the first week, then making those reviews, and then filming Halloween Horror Movies 4. Because I realize September goes by a little fast, so I gotta get on it. And I missed a little bit of days because of my cold. Fuck flu season again. And until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, it's me. Then don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.